The Thistles. Short Cozy Mystery Series by Catherine Waltan. Copyright 2021 by Catherine Waltan. All rights reserved. Chapter 1. I will never get this assignment done on time, Marla groaned as she pet Tippin, her cat familiar, who sat on the bed, staring at her with his golden eyes. Marla had always liked to procrastinate and wait till the last minute to get her assignments done from her human school. This time, the project was for her biology class that involved the use of thistle flowers. While she could have gone and gotten them in a nearby town several weeks ago when they were plentiful, no thistles could be found anywhere. Understood the sudden disappearance of the flowers, but no one really thought too much of it. Tippin, her gray familiar with golden eyes, let out a mild meow while licking her paw. She then sat up calmly, looking at the young witch, saying, "You know there is a spell book in your mother's private office that we could use to conjure such a flower." "I can't," Marla said. "Mother has always forbidden me to go down there without her permission, especially to use her spell book without her knowledge. My parents would ground me for years if they found out." Tippin stretched out on the bed. "I guess we'll just have to keep looking then. Have you tried to contact the nature witches who live in the next town over?" "I have, but they do not know what happened to the thistles either. They said if we look very hard, we will find some." The young witch, who still lived with her parents and was attending college, looked troubled. Oh, how she wished she did not dawdle so much. It was truly one of her faults that she knew she had to work on. They decided to look in the meadow one last time for the thistle flowers. Marla put on her cape and grabbed an old wicker basket to carry Tippin. As they ventured out into the meadows, they had fun chasing butterflies, looking at the sky, and just talking about life. It became quite apparent early in the day that the flowers were nowhere to be found. Tippin sat up and gave her a gaze. "What do you think you're going to do? Fail the assignment and tell your parents that you didn't plan it out well enough?" Tippin didn't like to see her friend upset. They were so close in spirit that what affected one usually affected the other. It had always been like this ever since they were very young. "I would, but now I wonder if I should just sneak down there and conjure up a thistle or two. It would not be such a bad thing. It's such a simple spell. Surely it couldn't do any harm. I know you will want to lecture me, but my mind is now set and I need your help. I need you to be my lookout when I go down into the basement to cast the spell." Tippin shook her head and looked down. "I will always have your back, but I have a terrible feeling about this." Marla laughed. "I am just conjuring up 1 or 2 thistle flowers, and then we will be done. No one will ever have to know. Now come on, I have work to do, and I don't want this assignment to be late. It's already caused enough trouble as it is." Chapter 2. That evening, when the coast was clear, and Marla was sure her parents were sleeping, she and Tippin quietly snuck down the old rock stairs to the basement until they arrived at a heavy wooden door. Although the door was always locked, Marla had always known where the skeleton key was to open it. Her parents kept their secret hideaway hidden because her father, who was a vampire, had to have his ancestral logs safely kept prying eyes. Her mother, who was a witch, also kept her spellbook safely under wraps so that no one other than her own family would have access to the spells. Marla's parents were good people and always wanted the best for Marla. They wanted to make sure that she could make it in both worlds. The human world was encroaching and blending with their world more and more with the passing years, and it was very important to them that Marla become acclimated to human life. Therefore, she was told to go to college when she was of age. Marla opened up the large wooden door in the basement and lit a candle. She rummaged through her mother's books, careful not to disturb the bookmarks and fragile pages that her mother used for spells. Looking at all the library shelves with vast numbers of books, many of which were started by ancestors hundreds of years ago, she grabbed one to look through it, but couldn't quite find the spell that she was looking for. Marla went through several leather-bound books until she found an enormous book on the highest shelf. As she grabbed a step stool to grab the book, it was heavier than she thought she could bear. Tippin, who was acting as her lookout, shushing her every time she groaned, trying to reach for the massive book. Finally, she had the book in her grip. She flipped through the pages until she found a spell that would allow her to recreate flowers and herbs. The spell could be used as a thistle summoning spell. A brief note that she had written when she was doing research said that thistle symbolized devotion, bravery, and strength. Brews made from their petals helped warriors find their courage after losing a battle. Marla quietly muttered the spell. Tippin perked up her ears and tried to hear, but her whispers were too silent. She leaned into the book to see better as it was dark, holding the candle as close as she could, and muttered the words over again. "Why did you say the spell twice?" Tippin asked. "Well, I wanted to make sure I had at least two, in case I messed the first one up," Marla said, whispering back. A light flashed, and glowing the whirlwind which blew the pages around that were idle on the desk. "Oh my gosh, I hope this doesn't get too much louder," Tippin said, worried that it might wake up her parents. Two beautiful purple thistle flowers appeared. Marla grabbed them, and they quickly cleaned up the office, blowing out the candles, locking the door, and scampering back upstairs to her bedroom. Chapter 3. After Marla shut the door, she wavered, nearly collapsing on the bed. Is this what passing out felt like? She thought, blinking her eyes, shaking her head, and patting her cheeks. "Do you smell that?" Marla asked, knowing something was wrong. She was short of breath, noticing that just asking the same amount of effort as running the mile to school. "No, I don't smell anything. Do you think that maybe the pollen in the flowers is making you feel funny?" Tippin asked. Marla shook her head. "I'm always out in the valley and meadows. I've never felt so weak." A magical doorway suddenly appeared, with flames swirling around it. Marla and Tippin tried to run towards the opposite door in her room to escape, but a powerful force sucked Marla through it. Tippin, without a thought for herself, tried to grab onto Marla's shirt with her claws, but the wind was stronger, and it inhaled them both through the magical doorway. They both stood up and looked around. Large, human-sized thistles surrounded them. Sharp purple prickles lay on top where their flowers once stood. The thistle's green leaves now appeared to be knife-like blades pointed towards them. Long thorns emerged from their stems. The thistles inched closer to Marla, brandishing their thorns. She tried to summon a fireball for protection, but she was too weak. Tippin, seeing this, decided to summon in her own power. She cast a lightning strike, hitting one of the thistles, making it burst into flames. It seemed that the thistles released a poison, which had a weakening effect, but it did not have an effect on her cat. As Tippin continued to fight and protect Marla with everything she had, her powers were draining at a quick pace. She knew that she would lose this fight if she did not get help. As loyal and as much as she adored Marla, she knew she had to call for backup. She sent her last lightning rod through her furry paw and was able to stop the closest thistle from using its thorny leaf in an attempt to end the young witch where she stood. Tippin stood up on her furry hind legs. Looking straight up, putting her head back, she muttered enchanting words that summoned a bright light that swept over the thistles. The summoning left Tippin to stand as she collapsed at Marla's feet. Marla cried as she picked up her furry feline, holding her tight and telling her how much she loved her. She felt that Tippin had a heartbeat, although it was faint. She knew she would lose her soon. Marla soon sat down on the hard dirt floor with her cat and cried, waiting for the end. A chuckle came from the dark as a beautiful chrysanthemum emerged from the group of thistles. Marla had only recently learned about these flowers in the very same classes she was taking that led her to this disastrous ending. She remembered getting in trouble from her teacher because she thought that a lily or orchid were the only flowers that represented a finality or death. As the beautiful chrysanthemum floated closer to her, she realized she may be in more trouble than she was with the thistles. Even though this flower was beautiful, there was a sense of death in the air. Chapter 4. I want to thank you, my dear, for doing what I have been unable to do. I was able to grow my army of thistles to proliferate your world. However, I ran into one slight problem. I could not get them back into that dimension, the chrysanthemum scoffed, but you were able to open this portal for me with a simple spell. Now that I have a way out, my plan will be complete. The demon looked down at Marla, who still held her cat. I'm not a fan of cats, especially talking ones. Your cat will be gone soon enough, and you will help me do my bidding. Marla cried. Nothing mattered but Tippin's life, and how she put her in danger for something so stupid as a school assignment. If only she had listened to her family to always plan ahead, never get behind, this never would have happened. But now she did something that was forbidden, and not only was currently losing her best friend, but she also stood to lose the rest of her family, her world, and her life. The demon ordered them to be escorted to the deep, dark dungeons. Marla held her lifeless cat close to her heart, and the thistles jabbed at her to move, with tears flowed as Marla felt helpless, watching and feeling her familiar's life slowly pass. As she made her way downstairs, further and further into the dark, a cell door opened. With raw strength inside of her that she did not even know she had, she decided to fight the thistles and try to get out of there to get help for her cat. Just as a thistle was going to pierce her heart, a bright light engulfed the dungeon, revealing her mother and father. Her father, a large man, was wearing his warrior armor. Her mother held her hands together, pulling them apart to reveal a large fiery orb. Before the thistles could hurt Marla, her father grabbed both of them by the stems with his tight fists and threw them into the dungeons. Marla didn't let her cat go, as her mother gave her a hug. "Mom and Dad, I am so sorry. I had no idea that this would end so badly." Her mother cradled her face with her hands. "Shush, my dear. We can talk about this later, but now we really need to get you two out of here and out of danger." Her mother noticed Tippin was not moving and that her breaths were very shallow. She knew that she was close to death. Both her parents looked at the cat with worry. The mother grabbed the cat out of her daughter's arms and held her close to her chest. "She is alive," she said with her eyes closed. As they ran up the dark stairway, they knew that their only way of escape was to find the secret doorway that brought their daughter there in the first place. Her mother tried to conjure a spell to get her there, but the demon's power blocked the spell. She also knew that she needed to find and destroy the doorway or porthole, as it would not be long before an invasion started. As they made their way into a large hallway, they could hear laughter. It was familiar to Marla. She knew it was the demon that reminded her of death. "Is that who I think it is?" Marla's mother said to the father as they looked at each other in astonishment. Marla looked at them with a puzzled face. "Who is it?" she asked. He was an evil demon known as Scourge. He had a small following, and they had tried to invade our world thousands of years ago. When he was captured, he had a choice of death or confinement. He chose confinement. However, our ancestors didn't trust him, or that it would be enough, so they made him into a flower that symbolized sorrow and death. They thought that he would remain powerless in this state. When he continued to cause mayhem, they banished him into the underworld. "Other Marla, you and I can defeat him, but I need all of our strength combined." "My husband, you need to protect us as best you can. The spell will weaken us to the point where we will not be able to protect ourselves." Theos, Marla's father, straightened, showing he was ready to protect them to his own death. He kissed his daughter and his wife on the cheek and transformed into a wolf. As a vampire, he could shift into many animals, but his wolf form was the most powerful. As they took Tippin away in a corner, covering her with Marla's cape for warmth, Marla and her mother faced each other holding hands. "Are you ready, my dear? This will take everything we have. If it does not work, our world will fall." Tears filled her mother's eyes. Marla took one last look at Tippin. She would fight for her family and for her with all of her heart. She said, "Let's do this." Holding hands, heads back, and chanted as her father prowled around them for safety. He growled at the thistles that were slowly appearing next to them as a warning to stay silent. Her mother muttered spell after spell. Marla was able to pick it up, astonished that she already knew the words. This did not surprise her mother, as her mother knew that Marla would always know these spells. She used to read them to her when she was a child, and hoped that subliminally she would remember them if they were ever in a time of need. Off in the background, the demon had summoned his army to finish the family once and for all. He would find others once he got into the other dimension. This family was becoming too much of a burden to keep alive. He ordered their immediate deaths so that he could continue on with his plan uninterrupted. Marla and her mother continued to recite spells, even as they could hear her father growling fiercely with claws, scraping the hard ground as he fought the oncoming demons. Her mother squeezed her hand. They had to keep going. A bright light exploded from their hands, throwing them both to the ground violently. Chapter 5. Marla was the first to move. Dirt and grit covered her skin. Scratches marred her face. She lifted her head to see her mother on the ground, motionless, along with her father, who was barely moving his legs. He had changed back into his human form. The demon that had tried to kill them was very small. It was lifeless on the ground. His thistle army had transformed back into the beautiful flowers that they once were. She looked over at the corner. Tippin struggled to her feet. Marla crawled over to her mother to brush her hair away from her face and to see if she was alive. Her mother opened both eyes and smiled at her. Well, my dear, I'm afraid this is going to smart for a while. Are you okay? I'm fine, Mom. I'm just worried about you and Dad. Her husband's leg as he moaned. They helped each other up and brushed off the dirt from their clothing. Marla went to the corner and grabbed Tippin so she could hold her close to her heart. She was so glad that she was alive and seemed to get stronger. As they all gathered their strength to look for the doorway to bring them home, one of the thistles, the largest one, spoke. Thank you for saving us. I hope you understand we were unwilling soldiers for Scourge. He was able to pull us all down from the world above, and then put spells on all of us to become his slaves and do his bidding. We went from a flower that symbolized strength to demons made to help him control the world above. We thank you for setting us free. Marla's mother leaned towards the talking thistle. She smiled as she pet its tender petals. My name is Cass. I am Marla's mother. I think we all need to get out of here and destroy the gateway so that none of us will ever accidentally find our way here again. The thistle agreed and pointed his stem towards a dark hallway. I am afraid that we will not be able to go with you because we are planted here, and I'm not sure what would happen if we become uprooted. The door you are looking for is down the hall. We wish you all the luck in a new life here, although I fear we will never see the sun again. I hope that there's enough magic here to just sustain us. Cass looked down at the gentle thistle and said, I am a nature witch, and there is no way I'm going to leave you and your kind down here. You would not be able to survive for long. I will use my magic to help you make the journey, and then we will replant you back into the meadows where you belong and where you can thrive." She put her hands together and then waved them down towards the floor. A bluish-green light emanated from her palms, covering the floor. As they made their way towards the hallway, the light uprooted the flowers, so they trailed behind Marla and her family. When they found the doorway, it glowed open, and they walked through and found they were home. The house sat in the middle of a bountiful meadow, which made it easy for her mother to take care of the thistles, as one by one they floated out of the portal and were planted where they belonged. Chapter 6. Once the thistles were planted, Cass shot a firebomb through the door, destroying it. They rushed downstairs with Tippin to Cass's spell room. All three worked hours brewing a health for Tippin. They used a handmade straw to drop the fluid in her mouth so she could swallow it slowly. As she regained her strength, Marla gave her a big hug and kiss, apologizing to her for being so careless with her life. Marla looked at her parents, knowing punishment was forthcoming. "I am so sorry for what I've done. You were right. I should have planned ahead. I should have not procrastinated. Because of me, I almost lost Tippin, and I almost lost you. I understand I need to be punished. I'm willing to take any punishment I get." Her mom put her arm on her daughter's shoulder. "I think you've been punished enough. I think actually seeing what could have happened is a far better lesson learned than simply telling you and you not believing us. We love you more than anything, but never ever cast a spell without knowing the full consequences. Now that the thistles are back, you are free to do your project, but I think we need to give them a break. We'll summon a flower the right way that looks like a thistle so you can finish your project. Your human instructor should not know the difference." Her mother conjured a small orb, and out came a perfect purple thistle flower.